Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you I have another Sprocket Community Steel video. I'm going to do a couple quick announcements though before I dive into today's projects. First thing, I apologize, but I've been having a lot of different issues with previous version vehicles, if you will, when it comes to the most current update of Sprocket. So unfortunately, because of the amount of work that it was taking, it was getting to the point where I was doing a bunch of modifications to the vehicles to get them to work. I have decided to scrap everything and start from square one. Once again, I apologize, folks. A lot of you sent me different blueprints and projects that you have made, and I feel kind of sad that I had to kind of throw everything out because essentially I really wasn't keeping up with the recordings, because essentially at one point there I was roughly about 4 months, had 4 months worth of Sprocket Community Steel videos going. That's how many videos I had backed up, recorded, and piled up. And unfortunately, between life and other things, I just did not keep up with it. And because of how the update is and how buggy things are, I kind of had to scrap everything and start from square one. So if you have any vehicles that was built with the current Sprocket update, go ahead, send me the blueprints. I will try to get them featured if I can. But that being said, make sure it is made with the most current version of Sprocket. We're talking official Sprocket, not beta or experimental or any update like that. It's got to be the official, because when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's too crazy. Now, kicking off today's episode, the very first one is the Ram 2. This is from German Train, and this was actually a vehicle I had requested a long time ago. Somebody said they were going to create one for me, and it never happened. And, well, German Train saw that post and decided to get on the case when he asked me if anybody actually created it or not. So here we go. We got the Ram 2. This is mid-war. It is 21.5 tons. It is armed with the 57mm main gun, and it's got 81 millimeters of penetration. And German Train, I think for the memes or brownie points, not sure which, decided to put my logo on the tank. If you noticed it there at the front of the vehicle. Oh yeah, right there it is. There's a good shot of it now. So yeah, there you go. Brownie points for German Train and his Ram 2. Although it is a fairly good looking vehicle. Automotively, it's not bad. Gun-wise, it works. And, well, armor-wise, it's kind of shat. But the Ram 2 really wasn't anything to write home to mom about when it came to armor. So the next vehicle here is the Fitchel Koning 2. And this is also from German Train. It is 48.66 tons, armed with an 89mm main gun with 163 millimeters of penetration for the late war period. Now, automotively speaking, this thing is miserable. I mean, it's hard to get it to turn. It doesn't maneuver very fast. The gun works fairly good, though. The gun is rather accurate. The armor protection is meh. And that's mostly got to do with the type of vehicles that I have loaded into my Sprocket and the penetration it has on those guns. Now, at times, the gun does fall a little bit short, but that's more me than the tank itself. Other than that, it's actually not a bad rendition or inspiration of the Tiger 2. I mean, he did really copy the Cane Tiger to get this thing going. As you can see there, the armor's just not holding up. Alright, the next vehicle we have is the M2A2 Mod 6 from Ghost ODN. And this weighs in at 63.1 tons, is armed with a 129mm main gun, and it has 145 millimeters of penetration, which got me really scratching my head because, well, it seemed better than that. It is for the late war period as well, and he claims that it's an inspiration of the M60 and the M1 Abrams. I guess I can sort of kind of see that when I look at the turret, but realistically, I would say this is more of an original design of his over being inspired by the Abrams and the M60. That being said, the hull is designed, the hull and turret both actually has ERA completely covering it. It does have a barrel evacuator, which I think is actually rather cool. That's a nice feature that's been added to Sprocket over the recent months. And it does actually get up and go fairly well, although I clipped really weird in that tree there. I think that had to do more with the turret than anything else. But in any case, the vehicle actually does rather good. It does get up and go rather good. It's got external fuel tanks. I feel the engine deck itself is actually rather neat design, the way he did the blowers and the exhaust and everything else to it. So all in all, I think this is actually a rather cool design that he did here, even though it's more of a rudimentary design, if you will. The next vehicle I have here is from Gasman, and this is his T50. And it weighs in at 11.4 tons. It is armed with a 45mm main gun, and it has 56 millimeters of penetration. It falls kind of short, though. I'm going to have to say that. Now, it is for the early war period. Now, armor-wise, the armor is, well, the armor's trash. I mean, it's a light tank, so it's got nothing in the way of armor. And honestly, in my honest opinion, the gun is actually pretty trash as well. The accuracy and velocity is actually rather good, but where it falls short is actually the penetration. It struggles against penetrating so many different vehicles that I've put it up against. That the 56 millimeters of penetration really isn't enough. I think what I would do personally is increase the shell length a little bit to give it a little bit more penetration. You know, maybe give it something closer to like 70. You know, and 70 would be pretty good for the early war period. And but that being said, mobility-wise, it is very superb mobility-wise, very agile. Now, as you can see here, I am going up against these Su-76Is, which is actually a modification of the Panzer III, actually, that the Soviets did. They did this with some captured Panzer IIIs, kind of made their own pseudo version of the Stug, if you will, with them. And even against these, I struggled to penetrate them and even struggled to kill them. Like the one Su-76 here, I popped a lot of shots into the rear of the casemate, and it just would not kill this vehicle. Well, it's this one here, and quite a few of them actually penetrated. Also, that being said, the gun depression is rather poor. It's got very poor gun depression, but yeah, you know, it's Soviet, so it's okay. You know, gun depression. What does that? We take pills for that. All right, the next vehicle I have here is from Muzu. I don't know if I said his name right. I think it's Muzu 10, and this is his El Camino Mark I, and what a very weird design he's got going here. This thing's actually got 4 turrets. One is armed with a 57mm main gun that has 67 millimeters of penetration. It's got a secondary turret armed with a 47mm main gun with 65 millimeters of penetration. And that's in one firing group. And that's actually the 2 turrets that you see traversing here. And then it's also got 2 smaller secondary turrets with 20mm autocannons that only has 11 millimeters of penetration. Now, this thing does weigh in at 34.5 tons, and it is an early war period tank. And that being said, this thing would be a miserable design to try to use. Now, the one gun unfortunately clips because of how Sprocket is currently coded. That secondary turret can actually traverse all the way around, even though it should not be able to, for obvious reasons. Same way with the turret on the rear. I believe that one would also be able to traverse all the way around as well, but that's just a limitation of Sprocket itself. Mobility-wise, mobility is not bad. The armor actually did hold up in my testing. That being said, I didn't really go up against any vehicles that were extremely amazing. But all in all, it's not a bad design. I actually rather like it. I think it's kind of a cool design for being an original design. All right, and the final tank I have here today is from Coast 05. Yeah, that's like Ghost, but with a C instead of a, yeah, whatever. You've all heard it before. You don't need to hear it again. And this is his 44M, and it weighs in at 23.22 tons, armed with a 75 millimeter main gun, and it has 128 millimeters of penetration for the early war period, even though I'm in a mid-war period mission. Now, the vehicle itself actually did pretty well. I mean, the armor is okay-ish. It works against some of the lighter tank guns that you're going to go up against more than likely. Penetration-wise, penetration's actually rather good, especially for its time period. It will probably penetrate anything it will go up against in the early war period. Say if you have a KV-1 loaded, it should be able to penetrate the KV-1. Not 100% sure. It would definitely penetrate the sides of the KV-1 because KV-1's only got 75 millimeters of armor. So, yeah, it should penetrate most vehicles. Now, maneuverability-wise, it's meh. It's very mediocre. Nothing special. But it gets the vehicle to the battle, gets the gun in position, etc., etc. Now, when it comes to the gun traverse, the azimuth and all that stuff, it does actually do very well. And it even actually has a fairly wide gun traverse to the left and to the right. And actually, it's got decent gun depression and elevation. So actually, when it comes to that stuff in those regards, he actually did pretty well in those regards. The vehicle, I kind of like how the casemate's designed. Instead of having a more flat roof, it slopes towards the front. So it's got a high point in the rear, and then it's got a low point towards the front. And it's got a very sharp angle. And what that would let you do is actually crest a hill and hopefully bounce shots because of the steep angle that it has there. Instead of being actually flat, it should increase its chances of bouncing shots. Should. Or at least it should on paper. But who knows how well that works. Armor-wise, like I said, goes up against pretty well against like the 37 millimeter guns against these Stuarts here. Even though the Stuarts did penetrate some spots, but their guns just aren't good enough for this vehicle. As you can see, I'm just actually dominating them here with the 44M. But anyway, folks, that's all I got for you today for Sprocket. Now, I want to also take a moment just to say thank you to everybody who's been tuning in. I've actually noticed that there's been more and more people tuning into these videos. There's also been more and more people submitting blueprints to me, and I really do appreciate that stuff. That's going to keep these videos going for a long time to come. Once again, thanks everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you all have been enjoying these videos, and have yourself a wonderful day.